Hello everybody, we're ready for another screencast lecture. Today's topic is changes in population size. Let's get started. First topic is, how do changes in population sizes occur? Population sizes can occur in one of two ways. They can increase in population size, or you can have a decrease in population size. Speaking of the increase or decrease in population size, what specific ways will cause the population size to increase or to decrease? First thing we need to consider is the birth rate versus the death rate. So new members of the species versus when current members of the species expire. First is, if we have a birth rate that is greater than the death rate, what will happen to the population size? The population size will increase. So if the birth rate is greater than the death rate, the population size will increase in number. And conversely, if the death rate is greater than the birth rate, then what's going to happen to the population size? You are going to have a decrease in population size. You're going to have more members of the species dying than new ones are coming in to replace the ones that have died. Let's look at a specific example of this case. We have squirrels. So during the calendar year, 900 squirrels are born and 800 squirrels die. What will be the net effect on the squirrel population? Is there going to be 900 new squirrels? Yes. However, 800 of the currently existing squirrel members perish, and so you're going to have a total change of plus 100 members of the squirrel population. Besides a birth rate and the death rate, what else could cause a difference or a change in the size of the population? Migration. So here you see, for example, tons and tons of monarch butterflies that could come into the area, whereas previously you don't have hardly any monarch butterflies. All of a sudden, tens of thousands show up. That's definitely a significant increase in the monarch butterfly population size. A possible definition, and this is not the only possible definition, so in the future you may hear a different definition for the term migration, but one possible definition would be animals traveling long distances in search of a new habitat or a new place to live, a new environment for the organism to meet its needs. Now, of course, when we're talking about migration, there's all different ways that the organisms can travel from place to place, walking.
Considering they're on foreign territory, these boys don't look too nervous. Quite the contrary. They're fit, strong, and looking to expand their horizons. It's obvious the local hyenas don't know these heavyweights either, because they're running in to challenge them. Not a wise move. Adult male lions take no nonsense. This is a statement, a clear signal to all the hyenas and any lion onlookers. The new males immediately start to strut around, as if they own the place. This does not look good for our young lions, especially the males, who won't be welcomed here. Some of the young females, however, are intrigued. They're torn between caution and curiosity. After all, these fit males could be just what they're looking for to help defend cubs in the future. Of the two new males, Simba was boss. It was the beginning of a whole new cycle of life. The marsh bride was once again looking strong and stable.
Some animals swim, and they can swim tremendous distances. And then, of course, some animals can fly. Birds, butterflies, and our great friend, the bat. several different ways. One of the ways that you are probably familiar with is that seeds can blow in the wind. Here's dandelion seed. These, I always loved these when I was a kid. The, quote, helicopter seeds, showing some seeds are actually able to float, and so they'll float downstream to find new locations. And of course, my personal favorite, fruit that animals like to eat, and in those fruit there often will be seeds, so the animal will eat the fruit, walk off somewhere to a new part of the woods, and do its business. And often you can see the seeds located in the scat of the animal, the scientific name for poop, and those seeds will be well fertilized, and they can grow and form new members of that species in a potentially new area. A slightly less disgusting way that seeds can travel via animal would be when seeds stick to the animal's fur, like these burrs, and they can travel great distances on the fur of animals to new locations for the members of the plant species to start growing in a new location. Here's a video clip for you to check out. Nice little summary.
Three factors determine changes in populations: births, deaths, and migration. Populations grow as a result of birth and migration in, and decline through death and migration out. Populations grow when the number of births and immigrants exceeds the number of deaths and emigrants. Populations decline when the reverse occurs. Thus, the equation for population change is births minus deaths plus immigrants minus emigrants equals population change. In many natural populations, in and out migration contributes relatively little to population change, leaving birth and death rates as the primary influence on population.
Let's talk about population size growth. So when populations increase in size. Okay, let's take a look at this hypothetical bird population. And we're starting with one pair, and that population over time doubles. So now we have four. We have four total birds. That was an increase of 2 birds, that first generation. Now the next generation, we go and double it. So we had 4, now we have 8. It's doubled. However, that's actually an increase of 4 birds. So we've gone from increasing from 2 birds to 4 birds. And then when we do another doubling, now we have an increase to 8 birds. So it's not just plus 2, plus 2, plus 2. If it was, it would be 2, 4, 6, 8, but it's not. It's, in this case, it's 2, 4, 8, 16 in the same amount of steps. This would be what a graph of that would look like. So over time, as time increases, the population size is going to increase, but it doesn't go 2, 4, 6, 8. That would look something more like this: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. It's going to increase in this curved line pattern, and that is what's known as exponential growth. It's increasing exponentially. Easy for me to say. It's increasing exponentially. Here is a definition for that. Exponential growth is the larger a population size gets, the faster it's going to grow. So when we had the 16 birds, if that population size doubles, now we go to 32. So that's an increase of 16, not an increase of 2, not an increase of 4, not an increase of 8. We're increasing exponentially. So as the population size gets bigger, it's going to just boom in population. That's what's known as exponential growth. Here is a graph of exponential growth of pond scum. Yay, yum. And so here you see day one, a little bit, doubles, population doubles again, population doubles again. Still not that big of a deal, but once you start getting to larger numbers, they'll see how this is double of this, and then on the 10th day, that doubling just is getting huge. Now the pond is just totally covered up with the pond scum, and it leaves much less space and resources for the remaining members of the pond community. Here we see our friends again, our bird population increasing in population size, greater and greater. It's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger, right? Until we have no more room for birds anywhere else on the planet. We're just covered up to our knees in birds. Well, no, that's not going to happen, because eventually the population is going to reach the ecosystem's carrying capacity for that species, and we learned about carrying capacity in a previous lesson. But if you take a look at here, these two graphs, exponential growth, which we were talking about, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and this is logistic growth, where we have that initial exponential growth, but eventually as the population size approaches the carrying capacity, things start stabilizing and leveling out. Now you're going to have a little bit of this where it's going to go above the carrying capacity and down below and things like that over time, but overall it's going to be relatively flat and stable growth. So you might get something that looks like this on average. Here are three more examples. Paramecium cells having that exponential growth, and then the logistic growth, and exponential growth, flattening out, evening out. And here you see that scatter, where you have the Daphnia population, it goes up, and if you really trace this out, it would look something more like this. So that red line is kind of showing an average. Up here, we went over the carrying capacity, so there had to have been some sort of die-off, a mass die-off, until it went below the carrying capacity, and then things kind of stabled off. And you can see that happening here, where the actual paramecium population goes higher than the carrying capacity, but again, on average, we have a nice leveling off of the population size to something stable. Here's a video clip we can take a look at.
And so let's put our rabbits on the grass. What are they going to do? They're going to eat the grass, and as they do so, that grass is going to go away and they're going to have to move on to another area. And so luckily there's more grass for them to find. But eventually they'll eat their way into a corner. And so this rabbit right here has a problem. If this grass didn't grow back, it would really be stuck. And so if we had much more than 4 rabbits, we would have exceeded the carrying capacity. Now let me show you another model. This is a net logo model called Rabbits, Grass, and Weeds. So let me launch that for a second. So in this model, the rabbits are going to be these little white things with ears, and then the grass are going to be these little green squares. And so we start with 5. Now the rabbits are going to find grass if they can. And if they can, they're going to get energy, and if they get enough energy, they can breed. But if they don't find enough grass, then they're going to die. And so if we let it go for a second, it goes really, really quickly. So let me stop it there for a second. So let's watch what happens. And so this red line here is going to represent the number of rabbits over time. And so again, we started with 5, and pretty soon we had 350 rabbits. What happened to the grass? Well, the grass started to reproduce as well, but it crashed because the rabbits were eating all the grass. And so let's watch what happens now if we let it roll for a second. So we're going to see a big drop in the number of rabbits, and then it's going to finally hit a limit. So we're going to find like a perfect amount of rabbits that we have. So we're reaching what's called carrying capacity. And you can see that if we let it go over and over and over, the grass and the rabbits are going to go up and down, but we're going to reach a limit. Now let's say that we gave the grass more energy. So if there's more energy in the grass, let's increase that, we're going to see exponential growth again. And then we're going to have even more rabbits. Or let's say we said that the grass has less energy. As we decrease that, then we're going to have way fewer rabbits. And so that rabbit population is going to drop, but it's going to find another carrying capacity. And so what happens as your population size increases? You run up against these limiting factors, and those limiting factors are going to slow your growth.
Wow, what about humans? Human population growth, human population size has increased over time. Here you see, over a long period of time, human population remaining relatively stable. Here's the Black Death, so there's a nice drop off here, not a good time. And then after that, again, population starts going back to growing, then wham! Whew, you can see that the population just skyrocketing exponentially. Why do we see that happening? You take a look at here, modern age. So we're talking industrial revolution. An interesting question would be, is there a carrying capacity for humans? That is something that people have talked about for quite a while now. There's roughly 1 billion people at this point at around 1750. So roughly about here, 1 billion total humans. To get to our next level, our 2 billion, we're going to have to go quite a distance till we hit about here. So from here, 1750, to roughly 1875. So 1875 minus 1750, we're talking 125 years it took to go from 1 billion people to 2 billion people. Our next step, our second billion, oops, that's some bad drawing there. Our second billion would be from here to 3 billion, so about here. Now, you could see that that distance is definitely shorter than this line, and then we can keep doing that and see what kind of results we get. Going to 5 billion is about here. Again, you can see that amount of time is getting much, much shorter. So this is probably about 1960 to the year 2000. Now we're down to about 40 years as an increase. Next, we go to 5 billion. Not much time at all. Can't barely see that very well, though. 6 billion. I remember that one. 1999, a much smaller portion. Roughly, we're talking about 10 to 15 years we would expect to get to our 8 billion point. So maybe around the year 2022, 2023, we should hit about 8 billion people. Human population is growing exponentially. Will there be a carrying capacity where the Earth can't provide enough resources for all of those people? Certainly hope not. Now, the big difference is that for humans, we are able to manipulate our environment at a much greater amount than any other species around. I mean, gorillas, they don't do modern farming like we do, so we can produce much, much more food, fertilizer, tractors, farming. Then also have the ability to do things like having modern medicine, which will help people survive much, much longer versus where people would have died of sickness or other diseases at a much younger age. And then also, maybe surprisingly, would be sanitation. So having clean water and getting rid of the sewage out of your houses and out of your streets, that's a huge difference and has allowed many, many more human beings to survive on our Earth than have been in previous times. So is there a carrying capacity for humans? Don't really know. I can't really answer that question, and I don't know if anybody really has an answer for that one yet. Hopefully, we won't find out.